Hello, you're watching TVP World News. I'm Jonasz Lewiński. As the conflict in the Middle East enters its second week, Israel launched a new wave of strikes overnight, including on Tehran's Shahran refinery and another in the heart of the Lebanese capital, Beirut. According to local media sources, Israel hit fuel depots in the Iranian capital, with eyewitness footage showing a massive blaze burning and fumes rising into the night sky. The night also marked Israel's wave of attacks against targets in the Lebanese capital of Beirut. Lebanon got dragged into the current Middle East conflict by Hezbollah firing rockets at Israeli territory, which prompted the Israeli response. At the same time, Tehran has continued to retaliate against countries in the region. A government building in Kuwait reportedly caught fire, and an Iranian drone hit a high-rise building in Dubai. Details are emerging concerning Washington's plans for a potential transfer of power in Tehran. When asked about his wish to be involved in the election of Iran's new leader, Donald Trump told reporters that the U.S. authorities want to pick a president that's not going to lead their country into a war.
You said you want to be involved in the selection of the next leader of Iran. Can you talk to me?
Because I don't want to just come back every 10 years, and mostly you'll have presidents, that won't do that because they don't get it. But we don't want to come back every 5 years or every 10 years and do this. So we want to pick a president that's not going to be leading their country into a war.
The muted response from the U.S. administration to recent reports of Iranian military receiving Russian intelligence support has raised a few eyebrows among commentators. Retired U.S. Army counterintelligence officer David D'Abato told World News Tonight on Saturday that such information should not be dismissed lightly.
I take with a grain of salt, rather, what Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump say. I think behind the scenes, they are extremely worried. Having Russia use their satellite system, using their intelligence assets to help, to aid Iran in locating and targeting American forces, it's a very bad thing. So no, they're not happy. And as far as them brushing it off, that's for public consumption. Behind the scenes, it's a mess right now. They are very, very concerned. And after all, why would Russia do this? Many reasons. It's payback for what America's done in Ukraine. We, the Americans, have provided Ukraine with our intelligence assets for many, many years. And so now Russia's doing the same thing with Iran. And also, with Russia, it's a matter of keeping an ally, keeping their word to an ally and not losing total control over the Gulf and the allies and support they've built up over the years. They're about ready to lose all of their influence.
The U.S. Embassy in Oslo was hit by an explosion in the early hours of Sunday morning. Local police report that although the blast caused some damage to the building, no one was hurt. The explosion was heard around 1 a.m. and witnesses described a thick layer of smoke rising from the building shortly thereafter. Oslo police said the blast had occurred at the entry to the consular section. No further explosives were found when the area was searched, and the police are still looking for potential perpetrators. The Swedish Coast Guard seized a ship that, according to Ukrainian authorities, had been involved in the transport of Ukrainian grain seized from the country's occupied territory. The ship, a cargo vessel called the MV Kaffa, carrying a Guinea flag, was seized on legal grounds. In the footage released by the Swedish Coast Guard, we can see service members approaching the Kaffa by a speedboat and boarding the ship across the stern, as well as dropping onto the deck from a helicopter. Swedish Civil Defense Minister Carl Oskar Borlin said the vessel was seized under the suspicion that it lacks proper insurance and that its ownership is unclear due to the ship changing from a Russian to Guinean flag as recently as this summer. He also mentioned that the Kaffa is on Ukraine's sanctions list. According to Ukrainian authorities, the ship was involved in the theft of grain from the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. Hungarian opposition leader Petr Magyar said in a post on X on Saturday that agents of the Russian military intelligence service arrived in Budapest with the aim of influencing the outcome of the Hungarian elections. Magyar called out Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban for inviting Russians to Hungary, saying that Orban is attempting to take advantage of foreign interference to ensure his own election win. The opposition leader added that as the country marks the 70th anniversary of the 1956 Hungarian Revolution, which ended in a brutal Soviet-Russian intervention in the country, its citizens must fight back against Moscow's interference. Magyar's claims of Russian interference have been confirmed by the independent journalism outlet V-Square. Citing multiple European national security sources, V-Square reports that the operation is overseen by Sergei Kirilenko, who previously oversaw the interference campaign in Moldova. His operatives ran vote-buying networks, troll farms and on-the-ground influence campaigns aimed at undermining pro-European President Maia Sandu. Hungarian authorities on Friday released the 7 Ukrainian nationals whom they accuse of conducting a money laundering scheme after Budapest seized a Ukrainian bank convoy. Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski said that the short detention time and subsequent release indicate that the Hungarian authorities have made a mistake.
I believe the Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha, who wrote that this was a regular transfer to a Ukrainian state bank. And the fact that these people have already been released by the Hungarian authorities would indicate that this was a mistake and, regrettably, part of a political election campaign. The main theme of this campaign has become hostility towards Ukraine. And this hostility is unfortunately not just propaganda invented, but a real phenomenon. For years, Hungary has been blocking payments from the European budget to armed forces of member states, including 466 million euros for the Polish Armed Forces Modernization Fund. Hungary has also prevented us from achieving our priority in the European Union, which was to open at least one negotiation cluster with Ukraine.
In Germany, a regional election in the southwestern state of Baden-Württemberg is shaping up as a litmus test for Chancellor Friedrich Merz and his governing coalition. It's the first of 5 state votes this year, with Merz hoping for a boost for his conservative Christian Democratic Union as he aims to push through national reforms. Our correspondent Sasha Farbach reports from Stuttgart.
We're in Baden-Württemberg. Now, this is a place perhaps not known, but there are big brands that have done well here for Germany, big auto brands, if we're looking at Porsche, if we're looking at Mercedes, but also other big names like Bosch. Big industry here that impacts all of Germany. Now, this is why this matters also for the coalition in Berlin. This is home territory of the CDU, those Christian Democrats that are governing right now, and then a coalition with the SPD. Now, they're supposed to do well here. The SPD here, not so much. They're trailing far behind, well below, around 8% if we're looking at some of those polls, and that could have ramifications down the line, especially for the coalition. Another one on the horizon, the AfD. Now, they've been doing well if we go back to the federal elections last year in the east of Germany, in the north, but that's traditional home territory. Now here, if they do well here, a few years ago, they got to around 9%. They're supposed to be getting likely between 14, 15, maybe in some polls up to 20%. Now that could really put pressure on the government in Berlin and be a big sign that the AfD is making inroads also in Western states. Remember, industry is big here. Now we asked and talked to certain voters here across Stuttgart, and let's just hear what they had to say. What are their main issues for this election?
Especially for us as teachers, education is really important because we are right now experience a lot of children who are not very well supported, especially here in Stuttgart.
We need more support for people from other countries. They need more, for example, help with documents, integration. Yeah, if they don't get it, it's hard for them to have a good time here in Germany.
I think most of the people are concerned about the economic situation and the automotive industry. For me as a student, I have more concerns about the affordable housing and the official transportation.
Now with that also to know, I mean, apart from those issues, this marks one of 5 key so-called super elections this year will happen in Germany. In just about less than 2 weeks' time also nearby, also will be pressure, and also in eastern Germany later on. So this was going to matter here, will matter all across Germany. There's much to play for, and not only Baden-Württemberg, but Berlin and Germany will be watching. Sascha Farbach for TVP World in Stuttgart.
At a time when Poland had vanished from the map of Europe, education itself became an act of resistance. Natalia Komarov tells the remarkable story of the Flying University, a clandestine institution that defied imperial censorship and nurtured some of the country's brightest minds. Among its students was the young Marie Skłodowska-Curie.
The University of Warsaw, currently one of the highest-ranking educational institutions in the country. But there was a time in Polish history when a secret underground university run entirely by women offered a much higher quality education. Today, to celebrate Poland's rich history, we will be talking about the Flying University. In the 19th century, there was no Poland on the map of Europe. It had been partitioned between Austria, Prussia, and Russia. In the Russian Empire, women were not allowed to receive higher education, and Poles were not allowed to study in Polish. This did not sit right with many Polish women. Not only were they great patriots, but they also had a thirst for knowledge. Like, for example, a certain Maria Skłodowska, later known as Skłodowska-Curie. But before this Polish woman could receive 2 Nobel Prizes, others had blazed the trail. The 19th century was a century of Polish mothers. While men would go and fight for freedom, the women were tasked with educating new generations to preserve the Polish history, language, and identity. The Polish mothers opened high schools for girls across the country. Some of them operate to this day, like this one. Officially, the girls here learned how to cook and how to sew, but in secret, they were taught everything about Poland. These educated young ladies wanted to go further. Barred from attending the University of Warsaw, they began meeting in secret to study together. Soon, so many women became involved that some structure was needed. Enter Jadwiga Szczawińska-Dawidowa, who took the reins of the project in 1885. Remembered by some as a little too autocratic, what she accomplished is truly amazing. She hired top professors from the University of Warsaw. She created 3 departments: social studies, humanities, and sciences, and even operated a secret library. Jadwiga made things run so well, men began attending the lectures too. At some point, this guerrilla school is estimated to have reached 500 students. By the time it registered legally after the revolution of 1905, about 5,000 women had received their education at the Flying University. Dubbed Flying because classes were always held at different locations. And it's worth remembering that the potential punishment to everyone involved was deportation to Siberia. It's thanks to the Flying University that a Polish middle-class girl, Maria Skłodowska, was prepared to go on to the Sorbonne. Another famous alumna, the anthropologist Maria Czaplicka, graduated from Oxford. Or Zofia Daszyńska-Golińska, the first woman to defend a PhD in economics in Zurich. As well as a whole plethora of lawmakers, activists, artists, and teachers who shaped Poland once it regained its independence in 1918. Polish women hold a very special place in the country's history. They led a silent revolution against imperialism and patriarchy, employing the most powerful weapon of all, education. This revolution had no epic battles. Instead, it was the everyday, invisible work of strong-headed women. For TVP World, Natalia Komarov.
And that's all for now. Thank you for watching, and please stay with us here on TVP World.